is Halcyon.
Halcyon?
Yes, that's my point. We all know impressive words.
Cerulean is a color, though. Halcyon has a complex definition. Cerulean is blue.
It's fun.
Dragons. I love me some dragons. Especially when they're paired with dungeons. But, yeah, I was kind of disappointed because that scene with Surge leaping with his two-bladed sword into action would never showed up. I never figured out why that happened, but the whole thing just got me so amped to play the game. And I played it. It was definitely different than most other RPGs I played because it had the different, the way you could attack was different based on percentages, and it builds up. You could build up your attack meter. The way the magic worked. It took me a while to figure out what the hell the ovals in the top right-hand corner of the screen were. I was like, what is that all about? And then I got the summons later in the game. I was like, oh, that's what it's about. I didn't know this game had summons.
Exactly.
Yeah, I didn't have the internet at the time. I didn't have the strategy guide, so I was kind of, going flying blind here. Just repetition, beating my head against the wall enough times until it broke.
Maybe we'll
both
hear
my
from
head and the game.
particularly interesting philosophers here. Let's see.
Oh,
that's true. The brief flash of Luca's child drawing of Luca. That's a very nice little moment too.
But yeah, just there's so many things in this game that, like, if you played Chrono Trigger, it just made you nostalgic for the game, but not necessarily in the sense you'd rather be playing that game, but to the sense like, oh yeah, I remember that. And then you see like everything they fought for get destroyed. Like, I almost cried when I was in the Dead City, was it?
Dead Sea.
The Dead Sea and whatnot. And you see all these references to Chrono Trigger, and then you even see the Vita Chamber. I know that's BioShock. I'm sorry, but what was it called again? The restoration chamber.
Irajon, something like that. Very close to Energon, I believe.
Yes. Yeah, and then it even has the sound effect of you still being hungry, and then you get to the square with the bell, and the bell's collapsed, and then you finally see the ghosts of Luca, Marl, and Chrono, and I always thought this was the case, but it wasn't specific, but how many of you remember, like, each one of them said something to the party, and then just someone shouts murder? Was that Chrono that's supposed to have said that?
Oh yeah, that was certainly interesting.
Yeah, because
I don't remember who it was exactly.
Right, because I always thought it was Chrono saying that, because he was supposed to be the silent protagonist. There was just one word that was said, and then Miguel comes out, that sad music starts playing, and it was so good. Then that boss battle happened.
Yeah.
And then I wasn't so sad anymore. I was angry. Very angry.
It wasn't nearly as difficult for me because it was right around when you fight Garai, I believe. I figured that's when you could start buying heal all elements, and I just loaded them up. So, because I did have some tough fights earlier, like against the Hydra and stuff like that. I think when I played the game again thoroughly, after I played mostly New Game Plus, then I played it fresh, I think you can do it actually quite early. You can buy as many heal alls as you want, and then it just makes the game a joke, But the other thing I favor especially is the only other game that I can think about it, which is ironic, is Legend of Dragoon, where the defense command is actually useful. And Chrono Cross is one of the few games that does that. You pretty much have to. I mean, later you can get accessories that help you, but it feels all much more strategic, the game. Now, it doesn't really work in some ways. Like techs have been downplayed, there's very few of them. Summons, you only really need it to get rainbow equipment, but I think the way that, the engine based around defense, it's kind of like so self-contained as it is, it just feels, with the integration of the element system, it seems like everything else was kind of, it didn't really need to be any more complicated than that.
Well, speaking of complicated though, there were a lot of characters in this game. Holy crap. I don't think I've ever met a single person that their final party, when you had access to everybody, well, almost everybody, was the same. Like, anyone want to volunteer, like, other than Surge, like, what characters they love to use? Do they remember?
Glenn, for me. kind of disappointed me, like the first time, how little he was actually in the game until you got Surge's body back. But you know, definitely fun character.
I do remember off the top of my head what the party I love to use. Well, other than Surge, I had Guile and Fargo.
You mean Magus?
No, that's not Magus. What are you talking about?
Play Chrono Trigger DS.
It's a complete coincidence.
Yep.
But you know, even without the Magus factor,
he's still cool.
I mean, he's one of the characters that had his strongest melee attack hit all of the enemies on the screen. He had the inverted element grid, so he had tons of super powerful attacks. And I thought that was amazing. And then even his tech attacks with his staff were awesome.
Teleport your staff into your enemy and rip it back out.
Yeah.
That was his level 1 tech, like his level 1 like special tech.
Yeah, it was the first of three. I believe it was like a level 3 element. And that was freaking awesome.
And he's one of the few characters who learns them naturally, so you learn them in New Game Plus, you don't have to find them, which is for some odd reason they didn't carry over in New Game Plus. You have to get them every time. You know, I just don't understand that.
Yeah, true, but
and capture elements, that was another thing I never really bothered with. You know, that was I could see what they were going for with trap elements, but I just wasn't interested. It just wasn't necessary.
Yeah, there was a lot of different complex elements that you could use. But it was a little overcomplicated, but it never really hindered the game. It was just more like bells and whistles rather than like a really complex system you had to use in order to progress. And then I used Fargo because I was a teenager, so I was like, yeah, he's a pirate, he's awesome, and he had a steel attack, which is very valuable. And I didn't like Kid very much at first. I thought she was annoying, but just before I knew who she was. And then his final tech, Invincible, the multiple sword slash. I love that because it reminded me of, even though I played it afterwards. Remember Odin from Final Fantasy VIII?
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, and then the kanji come up, Zanetsuken, and it reminded me of that a lot. And then Yu gets by him, he spins around and collapses, and he takes a drag off of his cigar. Oh, that was great. But yeah, there were for a game with so many characters, I found that they did do a pretty good job making a lot of them memorable.
About 12 or 15 definitely have integral roles to play in the storyline.
Yeah,
mostly around the ones who revolve around Viper Manor, but they do have interesting things.
Yeah, like what was it? The Dragoons I liked, except for the little girl one. Marcy, yeah, but Karsh and Zoa, who speaks like he's on an internet message board, all caps.
That's one of the interesting stories I learned when I went to PAX East. One of the few good panels they actually had at PAX East one time. There's a reason Anime Boston was voted best geek gathering, and I fully support that, here. But Richard Honeywood, Alexander O. Smith, a later translator, told stories about Richard Honeywood in the program, the translator of this, not Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VIII, and several other ones. He had to write a very unique program to also account for all the characters. Plus, it was like a bit of coincidence in having fun. Plus, each one speaking slightly different, like internet message boards or other ones who spoke in an accent. But it had to be done in order to translate the text properly and account for the possibility that you could have almost anyone in your party or more than enough scenarios. And it's an interesting little bit of translation, I understand. And of course, Alexander O. Smith, we mentioned Vagrant Story earlier. Now that's an example of going above and beyond. Like none of the Shakespearean dialogue was in the game originally, but back to it, Chrono Cross.
Fargo and what was the mermaid's name again?
Irenas?
Irenas or something like that. She was cool, even if she wasn't in the game a little bit. I did like the story that went on in the two different timelines there. With was it her sister that Fargo was married to, I believe? And let's see what else.
Zelivus.
And then there was the side story with Dario. I loved that story. Yeah. And then you finally find him, and you're thinking, "Oh man, I found him! He can finally be in my party." And then he gets possessed by the Masamune, and he's one of the toughest fights in the game. And that sad music plays again. And because you have Surge in your party, he just instantly kills him every time. And it was awesome.
And then Masa and Mune make light of the whole situation by saying, like, I think we've been sleeping or doing something bad, and then Doreen shows up and says, I'm going to join with you, and fix you up, and that's probably one of the big plot failings. Like, a lot of people think Lynx was the one who corrupted it originally after the fall of Gardia, but he didn't exist yet. So that's one of those things that it would be nice if they did, but you know, as some people said, the Chrono Bus is kind of driven on. It doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere. It's too bad.
Yeah, and some people didn't like the plot device of tying the storyline all the way back to the fall of the dinosaur kingdom with the dragons and everything. But I thought that was a really cool way to tie everything together. Like there's something like, you know, the very earliest way you alter the time stream way back in Chrono Trigger is the thing that comes back to. I don't want to say haunt them, but it's one that comes back to bite them. And the way that the dragons function, you thought they were your allies. Well, some of them were just assholes. Like the green dragon, hey, come here, yeah, I'll help you out. Yep, lunchtime, dick.
That moment, you know, like, I think I used the word single-minded, you know, like the man who ultimately, or the person, I'm just assuming it's a man, but it would be funny if for some reason they decided it was a woman. Or a thing, whatever, but they had to do some pretty messed up to stain the legacy of the Masai Muna enough to make it